Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to another week of VCT Pacific. We just wrapped up week 2, and I would say there were still some surprises, both maybe good and bad. But overall, VCT Pacific continuing to look pretty interesting, and there's a good chance that we don't know until the very last matches of who's making it to playoffs. But we're back. We're going to review our power rankings from week 2. We'll now rate our teams after their week 2 matches of how we think they're going to look going to week 3. And then, of course, as always, we will also review what our pick'ems looked like at the very beginning of the season and if we want to change anything for week 3. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so these were our rankings from last week. So this was after the week 1 matches. This was going into week 2. I guess that's the best way to put it. So after week 1, we thought, GENG, still looked really strong. I think a lot of people agreed that they looked like they were continuing to try to add on things despite the time crunch after Madrid, etc., etc. PaperX looked great with GENG. For me, a lot of people had this problem. They were like, wow, how could you possibly put T1 over TRX? Most of this was just like kind of holding out hope that T1 will figure themselves out and come back into their form, which we'll talk about. And then DRX impressed me a lot, so they rose quite a bit. I probably should have kept the up-down rankings here on how much they moved from week 1. So that's where we were. Yeah, I should have kept the green, up and red down buttons. Going into week 3, how do things look? How do things look, chat? Okay, so what's the easiest thing to start with this week? Let's start at the top. So GENG and PaperX. Man, people are gonna get so mad if I don't put PaperX at the top. People are gonna get so mad if I don't put PaperX at the top because PaperX did beat GENG. They did. Am I just coping? I might just be coping. PaperX beat them fair and square, and they both kind of threw away the matches they should have won on Lotus and Icebox, and then PaperX absolutely just smashed them. Hold on, I'm gonna come back to this, but you know what? Because the thing is you watch the way PaperX played, just like, man, their timings are so good. They're back to being so good. They're back to being so good. And here's the thing. After week's 1 matches, I think we all agreed, ooh, the PaperX magic is back. But it was like, oh, it still looks a little shaky. GENG looks a little unsure about what he's doing sometimes, or he looks a little too far ahead sometimes. But then in their match against GENG, it was like, wow, they are back. The way they were just double peaking, triple peaking. And again, these are things like you cannot be calming nonstop. It's just in their system, right? Of like, if someone's peaking this, I'm peaking that. If someone's doing this, I'm throwing my YouTube. It's right there. So it's really hard to argue against that. So it only took a week for PaperX to be right back at the top. GENG, I think, obviously still very strong. I don't think there's anything wrong when losing to PaperX 2-1. There definitely seemed to be a bit of a mental boom for GENG as well on Bind. So that's something that they'll still have to figure out. I've talked about this at length as well. This was the first time that this squad, and specifically Karon, has played against PaperX with GENG and something. I guess same for Lakia as well. So I think there's that probably was also not easy, right? It's always the kind of catches you off guard. So I think that's good. We're going to come back to third place because third place for me is not easy. So now let's go back to the bottom. Chat, I don't know what to do about these two teams, okay? I don't know what to do about these two teams. So last week, after their first week of matches, my argument for bleed over GE was really, GE just did not have firepower, right? Like, there was no other way to explain it. I thought their reads were good. They had some cool ideas, but it doesn't matter if I think I see what's coming on the minimap because it just never came through. So in my head, it was like, well, if you can't ever pull through what your plan is, then there's nothing really to rate, in my opinion, at a tier 1 level. So that's why I put them below. Whereas Bleed, they had a good opening map. So I was like, okay, I think individual firepower is going to carry them just a bit further. That was my argument last week. This week, man, I don't know. I mean, so Bleed looked just as, if not more, lost than GE did. But man, it's hard. It's hard. So it's not even anything against GE. It's more so like, I just don't know what I think about the current form of Bleed. So I think one thing's for certain. Okay, so like Zest still had its moments. Ye even had a couple pop-off moments. So it's like, okay, the individuals, I would say, I don't know if this is just my memory playing games with me, but I think in the Zeta game, let me look this up real quick. Like Retlo was doing okay as well, right? Yeah, like Retlo was doing okay. I mean, overall, Bleed got absolutely smashed against RRQ, but I think that's probably a little more credit to RRQ as well. You know, the Gecko looked a little bit better for Zest, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, the individuals are still there. That hasn't changed. The roster hasn't changed. I would say Retlo seems back to just being like a, you know, he's the guy who does his job, right? He's filling the slot. He's doing his job. And I think that's all you really wanted from Retlo. So, whereas GE, they still came into their matches with still some great ideas. And yeah, they had a great showing against Talon on the Icebox. But then they really let things... Okay, you know what? No, GE should have won this match against Talon, man. Now that I'm looking back at it. This was a game where I think you can go back and be like, GE should have won this. I don't like saying that too much about a lot of games because things happened for a reason. But like, GE should have won this, in my opinion. Although, should they have? I don't know. Maybe not. It felt like they should have when I was watching it. I've been parroting this every time I get an opportunity, but I think Lightning Fast is just firing on all cylinders. I think Russ has also been very impressive. I mean, the calls I've been, you know, praising actually quite a bit for GE, even in their tough losses. But even the fragging from Russ, very reliable, I would say, actually. I think he's right. He's fragging just the right amount that you would want to see from, you know, an IGO who can hold his own. So, you know, if like push comes to shove, he's able to create a couple clutch openings, things like that, or maybe clutch up when he's last alive, things like that. So I give credit to GE there. It's just, the thing is okay, here's where I'm torn, is if these two teams were to meet each other, which they will not in stage 1, but if they were to meet each other, who would win? I have no idea. But because I'm a big fan of having good ideas and good calls, I'm a big macro guy, I'm a big IGLing guy, I'm going to give GE the edge. The real question, I think, between these teams is always going to be, will Bleed get to a point where they seem stable enough? And while the firepower is there, the question is how simple does Bleed need to play for their players to perform well? And at that point, is that simplicity going to be good enough for Tier 1? I think we still don't have the answer to that. I think we're still waiting. And so we shall see. Okay, moving on. Ooh. Okay, so the DRX is currently, in my book, they're still in contention with T1. I would say these teams are all kind of like in some weird grouping of this. I don't think this changes for me. I don't think this changes for me, right? I think Talon is here and Zeta is here, actually. I think this remains the same. I don't think there's too much to change, right? Like, Zeta has pop-off moments, right? Like, Laz plays Chamber pretty well. In fact, his Chamber didn't play that well this week, you know, compared to what we're used to. And they were still able to eke out, you know, a win. So I think that, you know, at the very least, I think Zeta has a better idea of where they want to go, right? Talon still seems to not be able to basically execute their ideas very well. I think they have an idea, but it seems to get lost in the sauce a little bit. And I want to argue that probably for Talon and Bleed, a big part of this is comms. I gotta say, it's probably, I mean, like Ban talked about it in the winter interview as well, right? The comms, especially with Jip Boys, who's still trying to really get a better grasp at like how much he needs to grasp the language to comms well, things like that. I can only imagine Bleed probably has it worse. So That's probably a big part of why we're just not even able to really get a good gauge on where do they want to go with this, etc. But I would say Talon basically are getting carried by their individual performance like a little bit more than ZETA. I'm not saying that they're performing like better than ZETA. I'm just saying that that's how they're able to just stabilize enough on their wins. ZETA, I mean, I think ZETA's exactly where you expected them to be, right? I think you could have hyped them up, but I'm surprised that Huron's the one I'm actually not as excited about anymore, right? Huron's the one who's really been catching my eye out of the two rookies. Huron, during the offseason, Huron was the guy where I was like, dude, this guy's going to make a difference on Zeta Division. Hasn't quite done that yet. But I'm not quite sure if it's an overall thing or not. Then we have DFM, RQ, and Team Secret. Okay, let's talk RQ first, because we love talking RQ on my channel, right? For better or worse. So we love talking RQ. Let's talk RQ. RQ looked, I mean, they looked great, and then they didn't so much. So RQ absolutely smashed Bleed. Like, they just crushed them. They looked like they were running laps around these guys. Elmy Moore was just running around playing TDM. These guys just absolutely smashed Bleed. And then T1 decided to pull out the Indonesian card against the Indonesians, and they put Xcurit in the driving seat. And Xcurit was like, boys, I've been here longer than you. And he just absolutely smashed RQ. So I don't really know where to rate these guys anymore. I do think, not to give them like a way out, I think a big part of this was probably, like, who would have seen T1 switching their IGL again? Like, who would have seen that coming, right? See, like, what DFM did to T1 is what T1 did to RQ, in my opinion. So I guess if we focus on that aspect, one thing is clear. I think RQ's weaknesses were still pretty well shown. But how much of that was, like, dude, T1 just had, Xcurit just had some really good reads on that attack, man. They just, and the thing is weren't both the first halves were 1-1, right? On both of these maps. Or not 1-1, 6-6. It's not like they were getting smashed in the beginning. But any time RQ had to go on defense, T1 just, Xcurit just wrecked him. But I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't like a 13-3, right? I mean, the ascent was pretty bad. Not winning a single round in the second half was on defense on Ascent is pretty bad. But also, if you go back and watch that match, like, dude, Xcurit just knew exactly what to do at the start of each round and in the middle of each round. So the Ascent, I will put minuses for RQ. The Lotus, I don't know if I would go as harshly against it. The Lotus, I actually think RQ probably should have just won more rounds on attack. I think that's how I feel about it. And then who knows, maybe we would have had a couple more rounds in the second half. But the real question is therefore, like, how would I rate them against Team Secret? I mean, yeah. You know what's crazy? I don't think this power ranking is going to change, chat. Well, okay. Do I rate DFM higher than these guys? Oh, I don't know. But do I also think DFM is 7th? Definitely not. I wish we could just, like, tie them all up for 5th place. You know what I mean? In no particular order. Let's get back to that. T1 versus DRX. How do we feel? Listen, DRX beat T1. But this was also before the Xcurit era. Right? Am I right, chat? I am. And it was a 2-1. Okay? Granted, they got carried hard by Izu0 on the breeze. I don't know if it's like me trying to just be a doubter, but like, I don't know where to rate these guys, quite frankly. DRX. We're going to find out real soon. I said that last week between DRX and T1, but we're really going to find out this week because they're playing against GENG, and this time neither team has any X factor, right? DRX has been known. They knew that they had to play with Bane at the start of the week. It's been 2 weeks now. They've been looking better and better, and GENG hasn't had any roster changes. This is like a fair and square, well, it's not entirely fair for DRX, but it's like a pretty fair and square matchup between GENG and DRX this weekend. I know what it is, chat. DRX should be third. Overall, I think DRX, they've been playing even better and better. I think, well, I can't, DRX just doesn't want to become the same size as everybody else. Their egos are just too big, apparently. But I think DRX is, I don't think they're gonna beat GENG. That, let me just tell you that right now. I don't think they're gonna beat GENG. But I think they're good enough to beat T1 again, even if they were to meet again. This might be it. It kind of stinks because I don't think DFM, like, this is actually nothing against DFM's necessarily performance against GENG. DFM does not deserve to drop 2 ranks. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, here's how I'm looking at these 3 teams. Right? It's the win condition for me. I think they're actually all pretty similar. I think these 3 teams are like, they're just going to be traveling together wherever they go in the ranks. But the win condition for DFM is, well, okay, so it's a win and loss condition. I guess that's the best way to put it. So the win condition for DFM is they just need, like, they also seem to be pretty prep heavy now, right? After having watched the game against GENG. Which actually, quite frankly, I mean, Ash still talked about it in the pre-match interview on the analyst desk. He thought they did prep very well. And I would actually say I thought they did. But the moment that their initial prep doesn't work out, whether it's because of firepower or not, they started to fall apart a little bit and may start to overheat a little bit. He still got frags, but no one was there to really back him up and really gain any value for the round afterwards. So their win condition is kind of at the same time their loss condition, which is like, if they get flustered, is May gonna just send it, right? I think that's one thing to consider. Now, for Team Secret, they're also a very prep-heavy team. Like, a very prep-heavy team. But in fact, their win condition is actually, in my opinion, it still kind of relies on Jeremy, right? Can Jeremy really pop off when they're attacking, etc., etc.? Because I think they're prep heavy, the way they play their defaults, etc. Their defense is always going to be pretty good. I don't think it's good enough to enter top 3 at any point unless they evolve, but it's going to be pretty good. And Envy is also a beast. But they would need to, well, and then also Jesse Vash on Fade was not it, but it has to be, right? So that's something they should probably work on as well. But if Jeremy is not able to really be the guy that's like breaking things open and like, unless he becomes what Envy is on defense, then I think it's really hard to rely on Team Secret to like win a match, because you're gonna have to play attacking rounds as well. And then on the side of RQ, well, to me, RQ is the one with the like least clear win condition out of these 3. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. It just seems like they're kind of like just above average on like everything. Obviously, like Jumpkin popping off is huge. That's helpful for them, but I think that that's like their win condition? No. RQ seems to be more a team that has more, ooh, maybe that makes them worse. Losing conditions and win conditions. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Okay, so I've rediscovered my reasoning. If you have mostly losing conditions but not win conditions, then that's like stuff you should really been fixing, right? Oh, that's so smart, chat. Oh, you guys get a cookie. No, this is perfect. Oh, this is perfect. No, and this tells us exactly how we feel about these teams too, because any of them could be 5th place or any of them could be 7th place on any given day. This is actually genius. No, this is it, chat. This is the most perfect power ranking of VCT Pacific. No one can tell me otherwise. Well, the DRX T1 thing, I'm like, I don't know, a little bit, but then like I am wearing a DRX t-shirt, so yeah, we'll give DRX the edge. Okay. No, this is it. Why do they look like USB sticks? I don't think T1 deserves to. I don't think T1 should go in here. But listen, I said this last week. I said if they're not able to perform well against DRX, like, I'm losing all hope. But then they did this incredible thing by changing their IGL. So if they come into week 3, who are they playing in week 3? Who is T1 playing in week 3? If they come in against Talon and they look all over the place again, yes, they will also become a USB stick. You know what? Lock that in, quote it, clip it, do whatever you want. If they don't look clean against Talon, T1 will also become a USB stick. But until that happens, I'm giving them one more shot. All right. So with that in mind, we actually do have some changes here. PaperX finally taking back what used to be theirs. GENG dropping down a little bit. DRX will be going up. They get a big number because they're in the big leagues with the top 3. So mostly, I mean, I think PaperX and GENG, I think we all agree, are most likely going to be a lock for Masters Shanghai. Obviously, yeah, you still got to go through playoffs, etc., etc. The real question of who else makes it to Shanghai, I think it's going to be DRX and T1 are going to be looking at each other, but like any of these 3 teams could make a crazy thing happen in the bracket. Like they're capable of it, right? So at the end of the day, as people have said, PaperX, GENG, and then mostly like 3 through 7-ish. I think it's fair to say 3 through 7, and then 8 and 9, and then 10, 11 is kind of how we're dividing up the overall strength of each team. Like if we were to do tiers, I think Pacific could look very different by the end of stage 2. I think Pacific could look very different by this end of stage 2, but not too many, not too much changing, and probably not too much will change from here on out because everyone's kind of settling in. The only other thing is obviously Clove is going to be available starting week 3. So does that throw a wrench in our, in our rankings? Maybe, kind of doubt it, but we'll wait and see. Well, that's going to be the rankings going into week 3. So now let's go check out our Pickems. For anyone who hasn't watched these videos before, what you're currently looking at is what we predicted at the very beginning of stage 1, when we haven't seen any of the teams since kickoff. So this is what we were kind of assuming would happen, and then we'll make any adjustments based on our previous matches. Let's review what happened in week 2. I held on to the GENG Faith, and I was not rewarded. I also held on to the T1 Faith. I was not rewarded. That's what I get for holding onto the faith of the 2 strongest LCK teams. I should probably never be basing anything off of that ever again, which wasn't really what I did. On that note, congratulations to GENG and Chovy for going up to their 4-peat in the LCK. Never ever been done before in the LCK, so congratulations. But anyway, moving on. Everything else mostly pretty good. T1 RQ, I mean, I said straight up in my video last week that there's no logic to this. This is just full faith. I'm sending it. It's not the main broadcast stream, so it was going to be good. And then it wasn't. But T1 changed their IGL, so props to them. GENG versus DRX. I'm so curious, chat. Are you on the DRX build? Are you DRX build for this game? You think DRX is back as the Kings of Korea? Because I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I think GENG is just a little too strong. Yeah, I mean, chat's a little split. Chat's a little split. There's some DRX believers in here. I mean, DRX is making a real big case for themselves, right? Big win against T1. Looked pretty clean in their first week. Obviously, relatively weaker opponents, but I mean, if DRX beats GENG, I think DRX definitely can claim that they're back. They're back as the Kings of Korea, but I don't see it happening. So we're gonna stick with GENG on that. DFM bleed. It's actually kind of comforting to me that I predicted DFM at the beginning of the season. Just shows that I actually did have faith in DFM. RRQ versus GE. RRQ should come right back into another win, right? This was a tough loss against T1. I think there's a lot that they can learn from that. But GE also does not play the style, and at the level that T1 did in this specific match. So RQ should be winning this one. But I honestly, these are big games for Bleed and GE, because while they're more or less pretty much out of playoffs, I think these matches are actually really good matchups for them to give faith and hope back to their fan base, right? Like, even if you lose, even if it's even if it's a loss, hopefully it's a 1-2, and hopefully you've like shown some stuff. So I think Bleed and GE are in a really good position to do that this coming week. PaperX versus Team Secret. I'm going to come back to this. T1 versus Talon. I think T1, they should continue looking as aggressive and decisive, which I think is going to be huge against Talon. Talon still seems to be a little delayed in all of their decisions, so Talon has really kind of lost the fire, and I think overall it's good for them because, again, they overheated quite a bit during kickoff, but they've definitely lost the fire a little bit. So if Xcurate continues to call for T1, I think that's going to be absolutely beneficial for them, and also T1 was generally a stronger team. GENG, ZETA, no big. GENG, Team Secret, DFM. Oh, we'll come back to this. PaperX GE should be PaperX. Okay, so PaperX Team Secret. Oh, hey, PaperX has to play 2 matches this week. So PaperX Team Secret. Team Secret just does this every now and then, you know what I mean? They just take down a team that they weren't supposed to on paper. If I were to vote Team Secret, it would be purely out of just like, oh, it might happen again. But overall, PaperX should be winning this, right? There's no reason to say otherwise. Like GENG and Forsaken, like, they are just telepathic right now. They're right back in it, right? It's as if some greater being by the name of Alex is like controlling them from above, right? And they're all tied in this like one grand string in the puppet show, and they're all just flying about and the same tempo. So PaperX is probably beating Team Secret, no biggie. But Team Secret versus DFM, oh, dude, 2 prep heavy teams tied in the rankings going against each other. They both have to play 2 matches this week, and both of them, it's their second matchup. Holy. Oh my gosh, this is match of the week. This is match of the week. Well, actually, GENG DRX is match of the week, but this is second match of the week. DFM Team Secret, the USB matchup. Oh boy. Team Secret fans really want me to change this. I can tell who you're a fan of. I don't know. So we talked about this when I was on Plat Chat. We talked about this, that if Team Secret knew what was good for them, which what's good for them is making playoffs, not, they'll play this, they'll play their hearts out, but their prep, right? Their during the week prep, out of game prep, should really be focused on this match, okay? Because it doesn't look like you need too many wins to make it out of Group Alpha for playoffs. Whereas DFM, they kind of need every win. But honestly, I don't want to get off the DFM hype train just yet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually a big Team Secret believer. I still think Jeremy has even more to prove, and I think he's capable of doing so, and I think that alone would really help this team a lot. I'm actually pretty big on Team Secret, but I don't think I want to get off the hype train just yet. Listen, they made me a believer in their game against, where did it even go? Oh, it was week 1 against T1. No, it's not a 2-0 though. This game is going to be 2-1, and let me tell you what, chat. You think it's going to be a clean game because it's 2 teams that are prep heavy? No, let me tell you. This is going to be one hell of a messy, just food fight. Tomatoes flying everywhere in the kitchen. 2-1 banger of a series. It's going to be nutty. If either of these teams get 2-0, the hype just dies for the other team instantly. It has to go 2-1. But I'm not hopping off the DFM train just yet. I'm still on it. All right. I'm still on the May train. Overall, my my pickems aren't looking so good. Not that they ever really are, but they're really not looking so good. I've gotten 3 wrong every week, chat. We'll see if I get 3 wrong again in week 3. There's not really 3 matches I could get wrong, though, right? It's mostly just, no, well, there is, actually. Bleed DF, well, GENG DRX I could get wrong. Bleed DFM I could get wrong. Team Secret DFM I could get wrong. And there's a world where these 2 could also flip. So actually, there's a lot of ways I could get this wrong. All right, well, that's it. This is we'll revisit week 4 next week. These are my week 3 pick'ems. We took a look at the rankings. Overall, Pacific still a bit of a mess in terms of there's no real clear division outside of like top 3 and bottom 3. So we'll see how that lines up. But taking a look at it every week, I do have a feeling that by the end of stage 2, like by champions, we could have some very different winners from Pacific. I think there's a big possibility. Well, outside of the top 2, but I think there's a possibility we could get a pretty clear division in the middle of the pack. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the rankings so far. Not too many big changes, but do you think maybe there should have been bigger changes? Let me know down in the comments below. And of course, as always, happy to see what your predictions are for week 3's matches as we look forward to those. As always, it's going to start on Saturday through Tuesday. So once the weekend begins, it's VCT Pacific all the way, baby. And I will be on the broadcast, I believe, every day. Except for the first day, I'm on the Korean broadcast for the first day. So I'll be on the Korean broadcast for GENG DRX and Bleed DFM, but all the other ones, I should be back on the English main broadcast. Well, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hopefully you subscribe, and also please leave a comment and a like on the video as well. That helps a ton. And that's it for now. I will see you all next week after week 3's matches.